Warren, happy coffee hang, brother.
Ed Mortensen, happy coffee hang. Clink. I think we might get down eventually.
Well, folks, pretty good. That's 2 for 2, bud. We're good.
Welcome to Coffee Hang. Mornin Buzz Coffee Company presents Coffee Hang, where we get to talk to people of all walks of life, usually somehow related to music, and we have to chat with them. My good buddy Ed, anything you got to say?
I always got lots to say. I just try to reserve it for, when I'm allowed to talk. Oh, I got the green line here, so I'm allowed to talk. It's like I'm holding the bottle, right? We passed the bottle. Here, Frank, it's now your turn to talk.
Got it. Anyways, this episode of Coffee Hang, we have Paul Intson. Paul is... I'm trying to do this without reading. Anyway, Paul is a bassist.
You have to read, dude. This guy's bio is that long.
I know.
Hold on. Before you dive into the... Sorry, Frank. Go ahead. I cut you off.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to do the little short bio first.
Before you do the bio,
all right.
Tell these wonderful people from the heart, what do we know about this guy before we dive into this 12-pager?
Paul Intson, well, he's just a good friend is what he is first. But he's a phenomenal bass player. I remember being a teenager hitting the bars in Hamilton and watching him play with just various people in the city. And I just thought of him as a bass player in the city. After getting to know him over the years, learning about his composition and film work and TV work is something I've learned about. But then I also...
well, what is it that you learned? What does he do?
Well, now we're going to introduce Paul Intson.
Well, hold on here. Hold on. I think I don't think we're ready for that quite yet, Frank.
Okay.
So you met him where?
I met him just in the Hamilton music scene. Probably when the Hamilton Music Awards thing started in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah. Harrison Kennedy, various different people, various studio work at Grand Avenue. Yeah. We probably were on the same recording session, and that would have been one of the places.
Yeah, cool.
I think I was a little hazy exactly where I met him. Yeah. The first time.
That'll all come up when you guys start. You all start chatting. I met him on a Elton Lammy. What's the kitchen party gigs at the Crystal Chandelier that we talked a bit in the Elton Lammy interview.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the first time I'd met him, and didn't know anything about all the movie compositions or anything like that until the second time I played with him, and then we were starting to talk about his story that I'm sure we can get him to tell about Saw. Doing the music for Saw and then not wanting to do it again, but they paid him, some outrageous amount of money. It's a great story, but really interesting cat today.
Amazing, and an amazing human being too. On top of that, and he has so many things he loves outside of music as well, which just makes him a very well-rounded guy, and a hockey player who's got a one wicked slap shot because I felt it. it's all good. So anyways, Paul Intson, he's both a bassist and a Canadian multi-award-winning film and television composer. He regularly plays bass with Ian Thomas, a great Canadian singer-songwriter composer as well, and has filled the bass chair for artists from Tom Wilson to Harrison Kennedy, Jamie Oakes, as well as performing on many Hollywood film scores. He began composing for modern dance and media and television in the mid-'80s. In the late 90s, he was recruited as Michael Dana's music editor, instrumentalist, and additional composer. In 2005, his breakaway work on Skyland earned him an Academy of Canadian Cinema and Television Gemini Award. He would go on to earn 5 additional nominations, as well as a Genie Award for his work on Norman Jewison's The Statement. In 2014, he scored The Nut Job, which set a new box office record for both highest grossing Canadian theatrical release and an all-time independent animation release. When he's not composing or playing bass, Paul can be found scuba diving, skiing, or hiking the Bruce Trail, or playing hockey. But he just, we mentioned Saw. So I think Saw 3, 4, 6, music editing, producing, Melissa McClelland, who was Sarah McLachlan's backup singer, or still is when Sarah tours, and is now part of Whitehorse with her husband Luc Doucette. He's done those records, Rob Lamont records. As a session player, as a just the music editing of anything, he's done lecturing at the University of just trying to find out. I think Western University, all across Canada. He's lectured on film animation, on all different things, on how to score for it. So not just a bass player. That's for sure. That's what I first knew him as, just this a phenomenal bass player to boot. And I have had the honor to have him play bass on one of my tracks on my one and only record. So, and he played it so differently than what I. Red Chair.
Get your red chair.
Anyway, so that's Paul Intson in a nutshell.
In a nut job.
In a nut job. I mean a nutshell. So we'll go into more detail with Paul. So let's bring him on.
Are we ready, Frank?
We're ready.
Here comes, ladies and gentlemen, Paul Intson.
Paul Intson. Here we go. This is the fun part. He's coming in.
The drum roll.
Sideways. I think people are starting to get good at this on how to we're not.
They are, yeah. They're taking away our fun, our laughter. Maybe it's us that.
There he is.
Hey, there's a good backdrop.
Can you hear us, Paul? No audio.
Nope,
not yet. Where's your audio thing on your computer?
Top left-hand side. Can you hear us, Paul?
Clear as a bell. Can you hear me?
There you are. Yeah. There you are, buddy. Gotcha.
Gotcha.
I'm going to bring you over to this monitor here. It's a little easier.
I like it.
Right.
Well, wasn't this fun, huh?
Hey, good morning, sir.
I'm sorry. Cheers to you.
Hey, all right. Cheers.
Happy COVID morning to you.
Indeed. COVID number, what number are we at?
Oh, geez.
I don't even know.
Feels like 200 or something.
I was listening to Joe Rogan podcast the other day, and they were talking about like when this all broke out, like really globally, like kind of January, right? December, January. That's 6 months ago.
Wow.
That's a half a year ago. Like when it started in China and, in December, that's 6 months, man. That's crazy.
Hey,
it is.
million, eh? You just signed?
Huh?
Yeah, Joe Rogan just signed 100 million.
Oh, with Spotify, right?
Spotify.
Yeah.
We're hoping eventually that we're going to sign this.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're well on our way.
Exactly. We just need, a couple of presidents and people like that. No, but we're honored to have you here, Paul. It's amazing.
Oh,
Part of our joy is watching people come in sideways, people coming in without their audio. So we've had a few. We add all kinds of. In post production, we add animation to all these things and little stuff like that, depending on other shows.
And it's great advertising, for your studio. Yeah, I'm working in the latest in audiovisual technology online. Yeah, that's sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's sing something together. Ready? 1, 2.
No. We had Miss Amy King on a few weeks back, and we were saying that perhaps this will be the year when some engineer resolves the latency issue of recording from different locations. Because you could do it with click tracks and sending files, but to actually record a bed track at the same time.
Yeah, there's been guys using. What have guys been using? There's one.
Acapella.
What's that?
Acapella.
No. What is this? I've been told about one of them, and some guys have said it's pretty good. But you would. I don't know about you, but if I'm recording and latency is 30 milliseconds off, that's enormous for me. That's and I even 5 milliseconds is like I need to. It has to be right here and now, just as if it's an acoustic environment we're playing. Exactly. That's entirely I don't know if they're ever going to solve that. I mean, I've used the Source Connect, but that's different because it's exactly like you say. Like you're streaming from something to some. Like we use in Source Connect, they use time code. And what happens is I would have Pro Tools here, and I would be getting a file, but there'd be time code embedded in that file. So I'm locked with the file that's coming in, but the file that latency, do you know what I mean? So I'm following, I'm chasing something.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
You know,
it's not like quite someone, a drummer counting us in, go 2, 3, 4, and then we're in,
And then you're in.
It's
Pro Tools.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say Pro Tools has was it this year or last year that came out, where is it called collaboration, where they're trying to do it so they can connect in real time. Like you can do a pass on somebody, like somebody can send you a session and you just get, I think it's the skeleton of the session, and then you do your pass, and it's not like in like real time, but it's the closest they've ever got for like the file transfers right to the collaborator. I think it's called collaboration, but
yeah, you're right. Ed, you're right, because I mean in Pro Tools, in the subscription system you get access to a cloud, to a session cloud. Yeah, and it's very fast.
Yeah,
the way they've got that set up is really fast. The interesting thing, for instance, if I'm doing string sessions or orchestra sessions, a lot of the last few years, I haven't been going to those places. I've been doing it here in the studio, and then, but I'll tap in via Source Connect, and it'll be the sound coming in my room is perfect. I'm getting full bandwidth. It's just 48K 24-bit, but I'm getting that. It sounds like I'm in the studio. It just sounds. And then I'm talking via Skype with the conductor, and so it's very close to being real. You can have your pajamas on, and there's like however many musicians on the floor, and you can sit here with your pajamas on.
Yeah,
I know.
Session's over, and you go upstairs and have lunch.
Yeah. So very similar to these coffee hangs. Because it's all pajama from waist down over here.
I've got nothing on over here.
I was just going to say, oh no, trouble in the making. Right. How you been doing there, Paul, through this COVID thing?
Okay. How about you guys? Like, you guys launched. I'm so interested in this. Really, because you guys, I got to say, this was fantastic. Morning Buzz. I saw, when I first saw the release on it, I went, this is really what I'm so amazed that you guys, because both of you guys have sort of like you have your trade already down. You've already been stalwarts in playing music for a long time, but to go on a beautiful journey now, a business venture at this point, is really fantastic. Mm-hmm. And hats off to you for going down the avenue you went down, because nobody else I know has done this.
Thank you.
Well, it's like our story says, we just both love it and have trouble when you're having to move quickly from music can be a lot of waiting, but there's also a lot of hurry up. It's like 4:30 a.m. lobby thing. You're going to have garbage coffee there. Roadside coffee's not the best, gas station coffee. Occasionally you get good dressing room coffee, but we just started packing our own stuff. And the story was very quick that, let's just maybe find some roasted coffee. And then I said, why don't we just do that? And that transferred into it. And now we had, I think a year ago, we had set April 2nd, not April 1st, because we didn't want to be April Fools, but we said April 2nd will be the day we launch. Mm. So we had set that in sort of hard mark for a launch, and it helps propel you towards it. We just didn't plan on a worldwide pandemic to hit at the same time.
And then we asked each other, we're like, do we continue this? Like, is it in bad taste, or is it bad timing, or is and we're like, no, this is like perfect timing. Like, everyone still needs coffee, and we can get it to their door, so why not, right?
It's like the biggest sale that's happened in like all the music stores that have done ridiculously well right now.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
studio stuff. Nobody's launching coffee companies.
Yeah. Right.
Very
Like,
true.
oh,
Yeah.
this is a beautiful. I think it's a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah, the online thing. If you have it, you already have it. You have a distribution in place for getting it to people. Man,
Mhm.
yeah. Well,
That's
and
been
we
the challenge. That's been the distribution has been the challenge with shipping and shipping rates through the roof, just because like everybody's shipping everything, right? And the shipping times and trying, like, other companies that have been around for 10 plus years that are being able to, say, okay, well, free shipping. And then we're like, well, how are they doing that? And crunching numbers. And because we don't want people to have to pay $30 a pound of coffee to get it, but it's just, that's the world that we're living in now with all these shipping rates. And so that's been the biggest challenge, I think. Wouldn't you say, Frank? That's probably, shipping has been the biggest challenge of the whole thing.
and getting it on. I mean, because we put a local delivery, that we can sort of fulfill that a little faster, because if you go with Canada Post or any of the other shippers, they can't commit to their 2 to 3 day date, or next overnight delivery. A lot of them can't do that anymore because they're just understaffed. They can't move the product as fast. So it's been so we've offered it. We get it out, and customers are pretty happy. So we can get it out pretty quickly locally. If you have to get it shipped, most people are getting it between 6 days, I think, from the time they order it.
I found that, like the people that are ordering, say, Canada Post, like being shipping,
Yeah.
that ordered, say, from Alberta, or, they get it actually quite fast. It's the
Yeah.
local people doing the shipping,
Toronto,
like
yeah.
that we could drive to their house in, 15 minutes, and they're taking 8 to 9 days to get their shipment. It's kind of bizarre that way.
But it was also, we also, I mean, as affected anyone playing live music, we got stopped hard, for all our stuff for this year. We've been talking about it. It's been a little bit serendipitous in that it's given us the time to fix the bugs in the system for us as a company, because we have 25 plus years each of experience when something goes wrong on the stage, when something goes wrong on the tour bus, when the hotel rooms aren't ready, and we have all the coping skills. But we've never run a corporation that is selling a beverage and a food product that has all the regulations involved behind it. So by not having to do music work, we had the time and the opportunity to get this right. So I guess it's been a blessing in disguise that way for us, even though it changed the whole planned launch. But we've managed to sort of adjust, adapt, and keep going forward with it. So it's been pretty crazy.
you touched on something here that's for instance, so that you're compliant with health, with food and drug, for instance. Now isn't that already taken care of by, because you're working in conjunction with somebody who hopefully, don't they have that already cleared?
Yes,
They do. Yeah.
Okay. So what you're dealing with is making sure that the packaging is compliant.
exactly.
Yeah, that's really, hey, that's great. These are great
Yeah.
skills to pick up.
It's crazy. But it's just even dealing with, again, we've both done sole proprietor businesses. So where I'm a musician, you hire me, boom, boom. It's a straightforward tax format. It's a straightforward how income comes in, expenses go out. This has so many moving parts at all times between running social media, having content up there, creating content, doing these coffee hangs, and then fulfilling the sales, making sure there's constantly having inventory for that, making sure that our next thing is like, well, we got bags, but you got to make sure, okay, are you getting low on bags? Because that could be a 6-week turnaround to get bags made, processed, manufactured, shipped, and brought here so that we have them. So that's stuff we've just never dealt with, and it's a great learning curve. It's been like wham, up, but it's kept me not just overly thinking about the loss of gigs, and it's been a good thing that way. So I haven't sort of fallen down that funnel of what am I going to do now.
That's really, your timing is amazing. I think you it's a whole lot to be grateful for, that you're doing that. The timing of this just worked out the way it is. Not that COVID is anything we need to be grateful for at all. But
Yeah.
I think the way you're looking at it is really healthy. Good on you, Brad, guys, because you know.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and
it's been a slice.
What about yourself with the COVID situation, Paul? Like you just keep working away, right? I mean, nothing has it really stopped for you at all? Either gigs have stopped, but
well, yeah, gigs have stopped. That was a drag because I kind of had a good year lined up with playing live.
Yeah.
You know, the writing things is I'm involved with a couple of projects where I'm writing. Those have gone on. They haven't they've flown under the radar, so that's okay.
Right.
I've been doing some mixing here and still doing that. It's funny because it's been a great COVID has done one thing, and that's made me sit back for a bit.
Yeah.
And kind of go, okay, where's this all going to go from here? You know, really, I get to take stock at what get to take stock at how a bunch of things that I wanted to get a handle on. For instance, my website. I haven't had a website for 4 years, so I got onto that. That's
cool. Yeah.
Enough time. I do a lot of and getting away from music. Honestly, getting away from it. I haven't touched my instrument since I think it's been over 6 weeks now. We had some concerts canceled, and I went, okay, I got to go build some. I have a cottage up north, so I'm going up and doing work up there, and mixing and doing things. But my instrument, I've just sort of want to get excited about it again. I think that's a perfect way is leave it alone, you know.
Totally.
Allison, my wife, and I have a ongoing thing where we say, you know, how can I love you if you won't go away? And that's kind of how I've approached playing for a bit. The other thing too is whenever I go online, I'm checking out some fantastic stuff. This morning was Goat, that great band with Edgar Bro and Goat. Goat. What are they called? Goat.
No. I mean, Simply Saucer was his band, but I'm trying to think of what's his other band now.
I'm thinking of is it Edgar Meyer.
Okay, all right, different
Edgar Meyer, the really heavy duty bassist from Nashville, plays with Alison Krauss, but he's a brilliant classical player. And Yo-Yo Ma, and they have a band and an ensemble, and they're unbelievable. They do this fantastic classical takes on Americana music. So you know, I get to.
Who was in it again, Paul? We'll find the name of that right now here.
Yeah, Edgar Meyer and Yo-Yo Ma at Goat. What are they called again? Goat something. I can tell you. Anyway, and then you know after that I was listening to Symphony of Psalms by Stravinsky this morning. That was my morning. You know.
Yes, that's amazing.
So
Edgar Meyer. Oh man, he played with a lot of heavy, right? Just trying to. Oh, the Goat Rodeo. Does that sound right?
Goat Rodeo. Yeah.
Goat Rodeo. Okay.
Goat Rodeo.
They're and I just
check them out. Yeah, I'll check them out.
Yeah, check. It's unbelievable music.
Goat Rodeo. Okay. How would you describe it? You said like kind of Americano.
Yeah, it's classical mixed with Americana. So they do, you know, they do traditional American stuff, but they do it with like they'll do bluegrass stuff, but it's so beautifully done. It's
amazing.
It's amazing. And Yo-Yo Ma's been sort of in he's been immersing himself with all these different artists over the past few years, and this project has really excited me.
Yeah, neat, cool.
Yeah,
that's what I love about this hang is that we hear so many different you know, bands or like get sent down different avenues from different guests that we have on that we would never have heard. Like I've dusted off records from coffee hangs we've had. I've found new stuff. Like I just love it. There's so much that everyone else gets into that I never see in my whole life, you know?
Yeah. And we might, you know, what's cool is we might have talked about this on the road, but there's something else that's going on. Or that we kind of, but this is sort of like a great time to sit
discover.
back. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. We're not always, because normally it'd be like, it's, you know, you get back from one tour and you're now working on the next for side guys on the road. We're just always learning songs, learning projects. So oftentimes the chance to listen to something that's not a project is not there. The time is not there. It's like, I got to keep listening to it so I can learn it, so I can do the show properly.
Yeah.
So to listen to music for the sake of just listening to music again.
Exactly.
I'm getting back over the last couple of months as well, which is, I'm glad. I sort of get inspired again just by the music, and like you, not touching the guitar. They're there, but just there.
What's that band that Jake Payne turned us on to? And I've been listening to it. It's also kind of like a bluegrass. There's no drummer. It's all
maybe that was it.
Huh?
Maybe that could have been the same one. Goat Rodeo?
No, completely different. I'll find it, Paul. If you like, you will. I think you'd really dig this band if you haven't already heard of them. I'm kind of putting them in my rotation of listening to. That's the thing with the digital world is like you listen to stuff, but you know, back when you'd put a record on or an album on, you'd read the liner notes, and you know, by the time the record was done, you'd know the band and who mixed it and where it was. You know, now it's just like I can't even remember the name of that band that I like. I just know, like that's crazy.
That's just getting over 45. That's all that is.
I wish I was only over 45.
Yeah, I know. I'm on the other side of 50. It's like that. I gotta start playing senior hockey soon, you know. A little slower, a little safer.
Wheelchair hockey for us.
Wheelchair hockey.
The thing about so much material, and like somebody, I don't know if this ever happens to you guys, but you have somebody over, like you might have a dinner party. Well, not now, but when it is socially acceptable, when it's health-wise acceptable, you'll put on some music. Like you'll think, okay, and you put on Apple Music, and you go, well, where do I start?
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like the whole world is there. You have every record possible.
Yeah, that's right.
What do I put on?
Yeah.
No.
And then I started making playlists for that. Like I have a playlist called Dinner Party Playlist. Like,
oh, you do?
Yeah, but because I was getting overwhelmed with that too. I was finding that I wasn't listening to music anymore. And then I think it was like last summer or one of the real craziest summers we had, Frank. We were just always in a bus, like just living in that bus. And I found the love of music again. So I was starting to make playlists and then like literally listening to music again and not going on the random stuff or, you know, and literally like intentional listening. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
My son and I were heading north. We were going to the cottage last week. And we listened to Zeppelin 1, 2, and 3. And I hadn't really listened to Zeppelin 3 before.
Wow.
Yeah.
I really hadn't. And you know, Going to California came on. I never realized what a gorgeous song that was.
Yeah.
You know, and that record. And then I realized what really hit me was, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I never really thought about it growing up because I just liked Zeppelin. There's something about the sound for me that just, because being a bass player and I totally enamored with John Paul Jones. Mm-hmm. But putting on that stuff, I realized, you know, how how blues influenced it. I was a blues guy.
Yeah.
Going from Zeppelin to Johnny Winter wasn't a huge leap anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, what a enormous, how much blues I was listening to when I was listening to Zeppelin. It never dawned on me.
Yeah.
I mean, look at John Bonham as a drummer. That guy has jazz chops coming out for days, and like who swung like him in a rock world? I mean, it's just like, and you look at who was hit. Like, it's not like he had the same drummers to influence him today like that we have. He had snare drummers and jazz guys, like that's what he was listening to. Like the timeline of drummers was quite short when he was growing up, compared to now. We have the last 100 years, to look at that instrument and be influenced, right?
I'm curious, Ed, because you probably have done more looking at this. Have you looked at interviews where Bonham has talked about his influences, or have they ever shown up anywhere?
Well, there's not many influences with him, period. Interviews. Like, he's not all that interview, but I have read books talking about when he was young. He was a jazz drummer first, right? Because that's all, when you were being taught, if you could find someone, to teach you, because it's not like there were less music schools, every block when he was coming up in England, right? Or where he was growing up. So they were like jazz drummers or military guys. And that's where he got all these hand chops and stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, he stopped taking like any sort of education early on because he just started playing.
Because I know that Bill Bruford was a big jazz. I read his book.
Yeah.
I don't know if you read that book. A great book, but he talks about, that's where he really wanted to go, and ending up as a prog rock drummer was purely an accident.
Wow.
And I know that I recorded with Richie Hayward, and Richie talked about Max Roach was his favorite guy. Like,
Yeah, awesome.
He was going to be a Max Roach guy, and he went to California to be a Max Roach guy, and ended up in Little Feat. Thank God for us.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy how it comes. And even I know if you listen to old, like early rock and roll stuff from the 50s, they're putting a backbeat on the drum beat that wasn't happening in the big band, but when the solo sections come by, they're swinging the ride. If you listen to like Go Johnny, like Johnny Be Good and all those, when you hear a drummer that plays that song right, it's because they start swinging the ride with a backbeat.
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
Now, the backbeat was happening in big band.
Pardon me?
The backbeat was happening in big band, just in certain sections, because you'd have to like play the backbeat to keep the band, because the band is so loud in certain sections and so big. You'd have to slam down 2 and 4 just so they'd hear you, because they'd never hear that ride. Dang, 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 over crack,
Yeah. I guess toward the end of the swing era is when you started getting those backbeats, as the orchestra's got bigger.
The jump stuff. A lot of
jump stuff, yeah.
Yeah, they had huge backbeat in the jump stuff.
Yeah.
Or Louis Prima, all that stuff. Huge backbeats in that stuff.
Yeah.
Love that.
And
I love it.
Into rock and roll, as you can just hear morph as it went into rock and roll on that. And those are those drums. But when you miss it when you're playing with a drummer that's just playing straight hi-hat or ride over those solo sections. No, something's. And Donnie McDougall was the first drummer that pointed that out to me. He goes, no, you got to listen to the recording again. You can hear the swinging during all the solo sections, straight during the verses.
Like, even feathering bass drums, right? Like a lot of those jazz guys back then, you'd hear them. They'd be like, dang, decka, dang, decka, doom, 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 doom. Like you barely, you don't feel it like it's today, where it's like boom, ga, boom, boom, ga. But you'd be like boom, 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 ching, gakka, ding, gakka, ding. It would just go. It would just keep. They call feathering the bass drum, and they would just plow the tune along.
Yeah, it's a good record for actually really cool backbeat stuff is Lee Morgan's The Sidewinder. I don't know if you know, Lee Morgan was a trumpet player.
Oh no, yeah, cool.
Very fun, but check out that song, the title track from The Sidewinder. The groove on that, Ed, you're gonna just love this groove.
I'm down.
It's it's not quite. It's a back. It's a steady one, but it's not quite a back. It's a displaced 2 and 4, and it's like a. It's I'm trying to remember what the clave with the side, but it's you'll love it because he's swinging. He's totally swinging on the ride, but everything else is a straight 8s thing.
Yeah, cool.
Just,
yeah.
Just
I love that even in say like you know, in 50s, kind of like that early rock and roll thing where you get the, you know, the real straight hi-hat, but then everything else is swinging.
Yeah.
Oh man, that is such, like, I'm getting, my hairs are standing up. I love playing those grooves because it makes, you know, then you get the drummer face going on because you're thinking of different things crisscrossing all over.
Didn't Johnny Cash do that? Like the
Yes.
drummer, yeah.
Big time, man.
Yeah, Johnny Cash thing, you know, and everything had to be an E. You know, those are the two things about Johnny Cash. Drums played straight, but everybody else swung, and song has to be an E. You know?
Hey, you know what,
Frank,
I think we need to have more bass players come on because there's a lot of drum talk during the bass player segments. And, you know, we just did a guitar guy, and Paul, it was all guitar stuff all day long, buddy.
We were really nice. We kept it very light. But the thing for guitar players, at least for me, is when the rhythm section locks, makes what I got to do, any of that free expression, so much easier to do. When that backbeat is going weird, or it's like it's just not there, and that groove, that pocket doesn't sit, I'm always like, you know what, I'm done. Go sing. You know, singer, go sing. I don't want to play against that.
I must be doing a good job because you solo for like 30 minutes every time we play together. So you're really you have a ridiculously strong groove, you know, Frank. Like your rhythm playing is so strong. Not many guys, and maybe that's not a blessing for not a lot of bass players and drummers playing with you, is because you know, because you're like, you hear them go, and you know, sometimes with bass players you hear it and go, well, yeah, he's swinging around me, and that's good, but I hear you and I go, oh man, you got to make sure you're staying at home with Frank, because if you're not, he's going to stay for you. You know, you drive a bus good, you know.
It was thank you, I appreciate it. And it was weird because I came from a real prog rocky thing where I couldn't stand, for, you know, in sort of my formative years of high school, I couldn't stand anything that was in 4 until it was Stevie Ray Vaughan and Thriller album came out.
Yeah. And
I was listening to the Lukather's guitar stuff, all that chicken picking in the background, and then Stevie Ray Vaughan's right hand, and I went, his left hand's great, but it's his right hand, the way he digs into a guitar. Wow. He just keeps time flowing. So those two things, when I went, oh, this is what I should be focusing on. And then I had heard early on somewhere about if you're making girls dance, that's a good thing. We read a little bit of your bio at the start before we introduced you here, and it's 12 pages or something like that, Ed?
It's, you know, it's pretty thick. We've alphabet.
Well, it's bigger than our contracts we signed. But
I borrowed it. I borrowed most of it. I just grabbed a whole bunch of people's ideas and I just threw them all in mine.
I could tell by all the lines that you cut and copy and pasted and glued it on and then photocopied it.
Give us. I think my first instance of knowing you was watching you play with Harrison Kennedy somewhere at a gig. So this would be like early '90s. So that's where your name came into my life. I was in Toronto University for the late '80s. When I came back and I decided I want to start playing music, I remember going to see some shows with a couple different R&B bands and stuff like that. And that's when it's like, well, you got to hear this monster play bass. So give us a bit of background of, you go as far back as you want. You could be a little toddler. We don't care.
Yeah, where were you born?
Where did it come from? How did you get to where you went?
I was born here in Hamilton.
Oh, Hamilton.
Yeah, same here.
Are you a Hammer? What?
Oh yeah, I'm a Hammer boy.
St. Joe's?
Born and raised.
Were you born at St. Joe's?
I was born at Henderson.
They're born at the Henderson. Okay, I was
Yeah.
born in Joseph's. Raised in Burlington, in the land of no culture.
Yeah.
and I say that because I have a friend, Michael Dana, who, not to direct name drop, but a lot of people know who he is. And he had a way. Michael took once. He simplified it beautifully for what he distilled it down, that we were so hungry for other culture because there was none around us. You know, we grew up. Hamilton had a lot more culture than I think growing up in Burlington. Burlington is still been searching for an identity. But Hamilton already had one. And I think as players growing up in an area, we gravitated towards Britain and all these other cultures of America because we wanted musically to belong to something a lot more. And, you know, I got lucky, you know, back when we could, I started making a living when I was 17 as a player. You know, I was on the road when I was 17. Matter of fact, the keyboard player who I played with, who I am indebted to enormously, just passed away this week. He had a minor operation and something happened.
Oh, geez.
Down in Guyana, but he was really responsible. And I gotta just give you an idea of this guy. We're playing Dance to the Music, Sly and the Family Stone on stage. He's playing B3 at the time. And I told him, he would talked about a song that there was a song on the set list. I didn't know what it was. And he's playing this song and he's writing a chart for the next song while playing Dance to the Music, you know, dance to the music. And he's doing all that, and he's writing this next chart. And this was the guy who I was on the road with, and you know how we have those guys. We all have these guys.
Sure. Yeah.
But I was lucky at 17 to have that guy. Yeah, and ended up, a guy like that just ended up making me reach for more. You know, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of so. So like we all did, we started out with road bands, going all across Canada, and then a bunch of times, and then I landed a house gig in Toronto in the early 80s, and so I moved to Toronto for 8 years. I think I lived in Toronto for 8 years, and then
what kind of gig was the house gig, Paul?
It was at a place called October's. It was a big band gig down in Yorkville. It was so wild. I'd been on the road and I came home. My father, I remember, picked me up from the bus station on Bay Street, off of Bay, and he said, by the way, he had a phone call. Somebody wants you for a job in Toronto starting next week to rehearse. And it was paid rehearsal too.
Ooh.
Paid rehearsal for 2 months, and then the gig started, and it was a 3-year contract.
Oh, amazing.
Wow.
That doesn't happen ever, you know?
Yeah, like, and at that time you'd have all these amazing guys subbing in on the gig, everybody, you know, so the rotating door of players, I got connected to that. Mm-hmm. Then you know, freelanced for a few years, and then decided, after my dad passed away in 87, I met my wife in 88 and decided it was, you know, time for a change. So I moved back to the Hammer here, and at that point I was kind of getting out of playing. I wasn't going to play anymore. You know, I was getting into writing more. I had for the last few years while I lived in Toronto, I had more success as a writer than I did as a music writer than I did as a player. So mm-hmm. I just continued on down that path, and then once I moved to Hamilton, it kind of allowed me to take more liberties that way. And, you know, I took some chances and things worked out, and I ended up getting into writing for television, and then from there to film. And yeah, but at the time you would have seen me, Frank. I got back into playing I took a rest for about 3 years from playing.
Okay.
And then met with Harry.
Yeah.
Harry called me up and said he needed a player. Did I want to sub in? Could I sub in on his gig? And I did. And that was it. I mean, playing with Harrison was. Sorry about this. Just.
Oh no, it's okay.
Some of it's on this end too.
but yeah. But I didn't think that. So I kind of have been juggling these two careers, you know, simultaneously. One as a writer, one as a player. But I really have tried to just do gigs as a player that I only wanted to do. I didn't want to, you know, I can remember when I lived in Toronto at one point, just before I stopped playing, like being on a gig that I didn't want to be on, and I was with a saxophone player, a brilliant saxophone player, who pointed out to me at the end of the first set that I had he said, "Look at the top of your amp," and I looked at the top of my amp, and it was 12 glasses, and they were all screwdrivers, and they were all doubles, and that's what I had done to get to the first set. And I actually left the gig that night. I just said, don't call me again, and I stopped playing because I thought. And so from that point forward, I just said, if I'm going to do a gig, it's always going to be a gig that I think it's my fault too. I assume all the responsibility in how I was looking at a gig. You know, I was a frustrated guy who didn't feel he was getting. You know, I was younger, so I was thinking I deserve more than this gig, so I'll just, you know, my attitude was wrong. And from that point forward, whenever I got on a gig, I just thought, I don't have the right to get drunk. I have the right to do what Harrison's doing, you know, 180%, or don't do the gig, you know?
Yeah.
And I saw Harrison chew out band members because they weren't doing 180%. And
he told me a great story, just on a side with Eric. He said there was a drummer, it got hired by somebody else, and I think after the first set, Harrison went to you and said, I think I'm gonna fire him on the break. And you said, that's good, I was gonna quit on the break if you didn't fire him.
Yeah.
Well, he'll remain, I know who it is, and he'll remain nameless.
Yeah.
But there's one chance to sort of, you know, he came in through a recommendation and blew it with two people, not just one people. And it would have been, I think Brian was playing guitar too, so you get, you know, some pretty heavy, you know, performers on stage, and then that, you know. So
yeah. But I, you know, I as you know, Frank, because I saw you've been playing with Harry ever since. The guy just doesn't. You can have one person in the audience, and he'll put out.
Yeah.
He just puts out the same. You know, if 5,000 people or one guy, it's the same performance for Harry.
Oh, I've had, you know, before this all went down, I used to have a cup of coffee with him once a week. If he decided to sing something he was working on, here's a new thing I'm working on. That performance was like he was playing Massey Hall.
Yeah.
Of just, you know, the singing the verse or the chorus to you. It wasn't just like a fluff off. He just always dug in just to let you know even what the idea is. One of those kind of guys. Very focused, and very successful at it, you know, and especially in the last few years, he's had another sort of second climb to the top in his world. You know?
Yeah, I've been so excited for him that I've been you know, so moving back to Hamilton was Harrison and Jamie Oakes. Those were the two I was playing with, and I just went back to completely falling in love with live playing again.
Awesome.
And ever since then, I don't know. The Hammer has been the funniest thing was a few years ago when I was before I built this studio, I was going to build one up north. And, you know, Tim Tickner says to me, he said, oh, that's great. You're going to have a beautiful place up there, and, you know, you're on the water, and life's going to be great. You're going to finish the studio. And the first thing you're going to say to yourself, okay, so who do I call to come in? And that was it. The idea, I completely shelved the idea at that point. Somebody had distilled it down once again. Why was I here? I was here because of other people. Because of the love, the fellowship, the brotherhood I have for other people is the reason why I'm here. Yeah. It's not me, it's that. Yeah. You know, and those great gigs we do every year, you know, Frank, the ones we do in Ancaster.
That was my last gig of this season. I think, I don't know if it was yours.
Yeah, I think it was. That was
because it hammered, because I know a few of the players were flying off to Europe, including Harrison, to do some touring, and everybody was kind of like concerned about it. And then then the March 17th was when everything was shut down. So, you know, and that was like March 5th or whatever we were playing. Somewhere around there.
And it's so funny, that gig, because you just look around and you just go, everybody knows everybody. Everybody's a chum. Everybody's you could be anywhere in the world, and this would be really great. This would be a really
And the great thing about that gig was it was a chance, because it's a Monday night, and we kind of had it was timed differently so you can catch each other, and we all had dinner together. So it's very rare to have 5 drummers, 5 bass players, 5 to 10 guitar players, all in one room having dinner together, because we're normally not going to be on the same gig ever, you know. So that was and it's on most of them local Hamilton too, you know, a little around the area, and just hanging out, you know, on a Monday night, playing a nice gig, and, you know, for a good cause and all that stuff. Yeah. What got you into like film, TV?
Like, I knew I was gonna always do it, and when I got into it, it just happened to be at a time when Toronto just all of a sudden hit. Toronto started hitting, and there were a lot of opportunities at that point. You know, there was a surge in getting Canadian productions up, so there was all kinds of impetus from the federal and the provincial level to getting those going. So I just happened it was synchronistic, and I knew I always wanted to do that. And, you know, like, I was writing music when I was doing the big band gig. I'll just digress, as I do everywhere all the time. When I was doing the big band gig years before in Toronto, I bought recording equipment at the time, you know, because during the day I had my days free. So I was always writing and you know, writing these experiments, and you know, learning about recording and everything. You know, started out like with a 4-track, and then moved up, and next thing you know, but during these recordings, I would take them in at night to the gig, and I'd play them for guys. Guys would always say, I didn't know if it was an insult or not. They'd always go, man, it sounds like stuff that should be in a film, you know? I don't know if that was a way of saying, it really won't stand on its own unless it has some help from something else, you know? I don't, but I liked film music, and I want, and the great thing about that gig was I was able to meet a lot of guys who had arranging chops, or had, you know, I could bring in ideas and sort of say, how am I doing with this? And they would steer me well, and which I've done all through the ages. I've sort of, you know, because I wasn't a school player, I didn't go to school. I just jumped out of high school because I had a gig, you know. I couldn't finish high school because I was going to go on the road. And so that my whole life up until then has been schooling, as maybe as a lot of players, you just school as you go along. And I was always lucky enough to get over my head to be the guy who's just barely who's just on the gig. And after a while, I was able to pick up enough information to actually, you know, to be the guy who's calling the shots. So yeah.
How would you even begin, Paul, to look at scoring or writing for a movie? Like there's so many ups and downs in a movie. Like you're creating tension here, and you know the dynamics are really big and crazy in this section. You know, like do you get to look at the whole? Do you watch the whole film first, or do you start writing from the beginning and you just go in timeline wise? Like how do you? Can you give a kind of a picture of how you do that?
Oh, that's you usually have you have a spotting session. You watch the film, and then you have a spotting session with the director, and possibly the producer as well. And you basically go through, and try to get what the director wants story-wise out of the music. What's missing out of this picture? Is it the hope? Is it the anguish? What would really work for the director? Sometimes they're very clear. Sometimes I've gone on films and they have no idea, and they just say go. You know, here's our film, go. And that's fine. That's another way to work. Right. But basically, I break it down into components where you'll have characters, music signatures, these musical characters that happen throughout the film. My way of doing it is watching the film enough times that a music character becomes so blatantly obvious to me. Right. And that becomes that, and it'll be a thematic idea, and it might be a few thematic ideas. And the idea is leitmotif, which is based on the idea of theme and variation. Mm-hmm. So you try to come up with one concrete piece of music thematically that just tells the story. It tells the story. The inevitability of the film just unfolds because hopefully if you do it right musically, the film just seems like it's inevitably going to unfold a certain way because you've stuck to a character. Right. And you've stated that character. Now that isn't as popular a method of writing nowadays as it used to be. That was the sort of the older Hollywood style, was coming up with these themes and variations. So, but I still try to stay to that format, and I guess I'm a little old school that way, because I've seen how concrete that can help the story, how much dimension it gives to the story, and how concrete it becomes that it's just the story ends up holding so much water. You know, let me turn that off.
Oh no, that'd be a funny part. Take the call. We'll just
no.
Steven Spielberg here. How you doing?
It's my proctologist. I'm just making sure he clipped his nails this time.
He would just use a broomstick, you know, like bend over, or a hockey stick.
COVID test.
You know, what's really interesting though, Ed, is along those lines. I feel like what what I thought music was when I first started out and where it is now, it hasn't been a craft as much as it's been a university.
Right. Yeah, awesome.
And so I'm always going back for different degrees. You know, that's how I think about it. The playing thing is, I started out playing way too much, and have learned that along the lines that when I became a writer, I started realizing how much overplaying I did.
Right.
And my one meeting, I had a meeting once with Ray Brown, and I who was like God to me, and Ray and Hamilton of all places, and I mentioned that to him. I said, I'm a busy player, and he said, I was a busy player for 40 years. And he said, don't worry about it. Just keep trying because you'll calm down, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah. And I because I might have given up. I might have thought that I had no possibilities, that I was just not realizing that we all start out as unpromising beginnings.
Yeah. Have you heard of the book Effortless Mastery by Kenny Warner? Piano player, jazz piano player.
I know who he is, but okay.
Yeah, so one of his books is Effortless Mastery. And, he talks in the book about stepping back from your instrument, for longer periods of time. And then, we were talking about that when you said you wanted to just, you need the break is nice. And he talks about how you then internalize all this stuff that you've been either working on or learning, but you don't really have a time to process it because you're in the moment playing, or you're in the, like playing too much, right? And then you step away from the instrument, and he says, the feeling you get when you come back to the instrument, you just touch the keys for the first time. It's a whole new you. Yeah. And it just the way that he talks about it in that book is quite brilliant. Like, he come and did a clinic in our school, like music school I went to back in Alberta. And I bought the book, listened to his clinic and listened to him speak, bought the book, and I read it over my winter break that year. And it's a perfect book for students because when you're in that music school, that's what you're doing. You're just constantly taking in, what about the output? What about being you and being creative and like, you're just constantly thinking about technique and all this stuff you got to try and internalize, It's a great book. Great inspiring book.
And you get you rediscover and you get entirely excited again about
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that way but interestingly enough, like the studio has really, so building this place, the studio, it's been a sort of my new discovery has all been in acoustics, more like learning, for instance, the speakers and what am I really hearing when I'm listening, when I'm recording music, what am I hearing? Because after a while I think you get really hypersensitive about stuff, and so you start to look for detail. You start to look for things that will make parts of music very obvious to you. How can I explain this? For instance, phasing. If I hear microphones that are, I didn't know how much phasing when microphones aren't properly placed, how much it drives me either crazy or it makes me interested in the music.
Yeah, right.
And finding all those, finding a way to utilize those tools as intentional things, or
or being able to control the unintentional things.
And that's where you get some of the guys that are just I think of Nick Lagona, who just passed like around Christmas time. His main thing was being an engineer. He just, if you said I need this sound, he knew the mic placement to what kind of mic to use, how he was going to run it through the strip, what he might put in front of it, without having, because he'd just done it for years, going back to Tom Jones, to Deep Purple's Machine Head, everything, through Police and all that through the 80s. He was just a wealth of knowledge that way. So his switch to when it went digital was just, well, these plugins are just the same things that I used to do, having to go run across the room and run these things and all that, and still using the room acoustics. So it's a learning experience, and we should be forever learning, as you said, always going back to school in whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah, Nick was an interesting example because of how, once he decided to make the commitment to digital, he decided, I'm going to get, these things aren't working for me. I'm going to find a guy to design them. And he had his own plugins designed. And I worked with him. I only worked with Nick in the studio once, but I'd hired him for a string session, 8 players at the time, so just a small ensemble. But what blew me away about Nick was how involved he got.
Mm-hmm.
Like Amy or somebody, he just got so involved in the session and so involved with where we were going with this. And he was really good at saying, what is it that this picture isn't doing for you? And I would explain to him, and he worked like crazy. And I remember one of the headphones was faulting during a break, and he got in his car and drove to his house at the time, got another set of headphones. And I went, not a lot of guys would just go, oh, it's too bad. Stick it over one ear or whatever. No, not Nick. He wanted everybody to be comfortable, and I went, man, this guy's a top shelf guy. All those years, it didn't matter that he was older and he had more things, that his health was sliding down. That didn't matter. He said, I'm here, I'm doing the gig. Let's get it right,
Yeah. He was a perfectionist for sure. He'd drive you to he worked on a few mixes for me, and I would be like, nope, send me something else. Okay, I'll send it again, or he'd send it back, and we'd really work at it till he knew what the artist wanted out of it, and I imagine you're
professional than a perfectionist.
Well, yeah, exactly. Just caring about the product. There's so many. We've all come across the people, whether they're musicians, techs on stage, monitors, front of house, that are just they're just punching the clock, and they're okay, that's good enough for me, and I'm not going to try to make it. And you can always tell a front of house person that is going above and beyond to make it sound fantastic, because they'll be like doing different miking things on the drums. Hey, I can do this. This is going to, when you go to your ballad, I'm going to do this to your kick drum, versus the heavy stuff is going to be just straight out changing, as they're mixing you. So finding those people, Nick was one of those guys. When I've had you on one song on my record, you just what you did to the bass part was not an expected part. It had like goose eggs, where you would like most bass players would walk in and just started matching the drum kit groove, and you just kind of goose egged during the verses, which then just pumped when you got to the chorus, and you built your way to the chorus, and it just like as soon as you get to the chorus, it was a 3-chord song. That just, the bass just makes it that much more interesting what you did. So the same thing, caring about, let me play it a few times, as opposed to me going, yeah, Paul just did it on first pass, that was phenomenal, and I would have been happy, but you wanted something more out of it yourself.
As soon as I heard the bass part over the vocal part, then I knew it was the wrong bass part.
Yeah, it's that kind of stuff. Those attention to detail like that. Just I'm not just settling for, well, this worked on this song, so this should work on every song that has that kind of groove. Mm-hmm. Not thinking about what you're leaving room for in space for vocals. I hear it with Ed in drumming. There's parts where you just hear the room for whether it's a guitar part, a vocal part, a fiddle part, anything that's in the music. Just giving the space to breathe, because there's lots of time for everybody to kick into high gear and play together that way, but leaving room for the other different people in the studio, on a live stage. All of it matters. Yeah.
Well, did you guys come up for the concept for this venture? Did you come up with it while we were playing with Elton?
Like when we first met, do you mean?
No, well,
back then.
I mean, did it when you guys? No, I'm talking about the coffee, the whole coffee idea. Did that come from playing with Elton or another band?
I mean, the process has been over the last couple of years, and it started on the tour bus with Elton. Yeah.
Okay.
But he doesn't drink coffee, so he pretty much put his headphones in every time we'd start yakking about coffee. Basically, Paul, we have the guy driving the bus, Frank and I yakking our faces off about coffee and trying to develop this company. We have a coffee roaster bass player behind us that doesn't drink coffee. And then we got Elton over there that doesn't drink coffee, and he just puts his headphones in. So we were we're, we weren't very popular on the bus from time to time.
Well, we'd get excited with it, but they're all happy for us now. But it was one of the guys he was a guy that would have just any coffee, whatever pours out hot, tastes like coffee. He was happy with it. The cheaper, the better. I think one of our things was, and I'm going to mention that, one of our large competitors, but when you can't go into a town or a city and get to a cafe that might be roasting their own coffee, Starbucks is a consistent better cup of coffee than the other guys on the road.
And it's everywhere.
And this guy just did not like the 25-minute wait that happened once. That was nothing to do with the company. It had everything to do with the employees working. So he was like, I'm not stopping for you ever again, like that. So that's when we came up with our coffee kit, which propelled us to get the idea of creating a company. It was one guy's not wanting to stop for coffee for just the two guys that needed it. There's 6 other guys in the bus that don't give a shit about what kind of coffee's out there. But that inspired us. We got to solve this problem about bad coffee.
You got to solve that coffee problem. We need that caffeine.
I got a great coffee story like that.
Yeah.
So we're down in Las Vegas. Ian, we're down there. There's Ian, me, John McDermott, right? So John's down there, and his guitar player Jason Fowler. I didn't know Jason at the time. Got to know Jason during the time in Las Vegas. So we were going out to Red Rock. It's a park just outside of the city, and we were stuck with getting we couldn't get a car, so we were each getting 2 cars, but we decided, okay, we'll all share a car. So McDermott gets a car, which you don't want to ride with him because he's a type A driver. As great a guy as he is, he can really anyway. So Jason's in the back with me. Ian and John McDermott are in the front. So John McDermott tells Jason to be the navigator. Jason's going along. He goes, "You got to get off the highway. It's blocked all up here." So John pulls off the highway and he goes down through the town. He goes, "Okay, turn left here." And so he turns left, turns right, and Jason goes, "Pull over here." What do you mean? And it was this coffee shop, this great coffee shop that Jason had now commandeered the whole place to go to this coffee shop. And he goes, Jason says to me, we go inside, and Jason goes, "Actually, I walk here every morning for my morning." He said, but I hadn't, and it was a really good coffee shop. And I understood at that point, Jason had spent, like you guys, Jason spends all his time on the road logging all the greatest coffee places.
Yeah. You got to know.
For great coffee places in North America.
Yeah. What's this board you got behind you, good sir? What are you rocking here?
Yeah, this is kind of been my board for a few. It's really, it's an older board, older by the standards now, but it's a Tascam board.
Oh yeah,
and it's just basically a digital router.
Yeah.
It's everything comes into here. I do have analog and digital on it. It has because I use this sort of hybrid when I'm mixing of a lot. I have a lot of analog gear, so I bus a lot of times to analog gear, and I might do some detail surgical EQ stuff in digital land, but then I do an oversweeping thing like Pultex and things like that. I'll do it analog, and then it just works for my purposes.
Love it.
The one thing I love about this console is the automation is really good. It acts as a central sort of driving. You over here on the right side, I can drive the bus. You know, I can drive the session, and then I forget about the computer. The computer once I get to a mixing stage, I might tweak, feather some things here and there, but 99% of the time, I'm just here with my head
on,
and the speaker's not looking at anything.
Yeah.
So I don't want to deprive, I don't want to rob, the focus I have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
a lot of.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, a lot of studio producers, engineers, front of house guys tend to start mixing with their eyes too much sometimes, because you keep looking at, you see boards, they're looking at boards and constantly doing this stuff. And you said you can finally put your, once you're there, you can listen to it and use your ears, because that's what music is. It's ears. It's, you might be redlining a bit, but if you're not hearing distortion and it's sounding great, just leave it alone. Let it, listen for that distortion, or that breakup, or does it actually work? Those kind of little things that I get it from mostly front of house guys. Well, it's coming off the stage a bit, yeah, but can you make it 50 feet wide? Because that's how you're supposed to hear it in the room. Everything blended and stuff like that. So
it's this board only goes to 96K, but that's fine because that's as high as I'm interested in going at this point. 96 for my purposes has been the magical number.
Yeah.
Is that normally what is used for films? Yeah.
No, 48 is usually used in film a lot of times. I mean, it's nice to record at 96, but like I've worked on last couple of projects I've worked on that were album projects, we did at 96, and then just maybe it just gives us the option later on if we decide, if the format changes. But I really love the sound of it. For me, for whatever reason, it just is. I like the harmonics and acoustic guitars and pianos. It's pretty nice at that up at those frequencies. So it's because most of the guys, most people are in a box still, and I'm still.
I like the hands-on thing, man. I was lucky when I took I got a diploma in recording after performance. I went back, and I just went back at the time when Pro Tools was being introduced into the industry. So I got to cut my teeth on 2-inch tape and editing that way, but then also got to learn Pro Tools. And I mean, the Pro Tools this would have been 98.
Okay.
So it was a very early version. And I remember having Pro Tools LE at home, and, it was very clunky compared to what it is today. But I'm very thankful that I got to learn, both those arts. Because being in the box, I mean, that can be fun and all that stuff. And then that's what I do. I don't have a big board or anything, but I miss that. I miss moving faders and, the analog world for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I have another board over, like right here, I have this one, just the
controller,
Mackie Pro controller.
Yeah.
I have that. Yeah, you can just see I have more analog, and I have more analog gear there underneath, and
nice.
under this, there's a couple more racks of APIs and stuff that I use. But there's something, like, for instance, the drums for me, a lot of the drums have to hit a Pultec. I have a stereo Pultec. I have a few of them. But once the drums hit a Pultec, something happens to me.
Yeah.
I'm listening to it and I go, yep, That happened. That was music that day. That was
awesome. Yeah.
You know, all of a sudden the dimension, the left and right come very clear. Something happens. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, you touched on so where did you go to school, Ed?
Grant McEwen in Edmonton.
Oh, you did. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I went for jazz performance, and I did that whole thing, and then I applied to a school in Liverpool, England, called LIPA, Liverpool Institute for the Performing Arts, and I got accepted. So I went there with a couple of friends of mine that also got accepted, and we checked out the school, and just the amount that the tuition was. It was a fantastic school, unbelievable. But it was like 40 with living expenses and tuition, it was like 40,000 US a year for 4 years. And I'm like, when I went there, and I'm like, lifestyle wasn't really for me. So I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to kick back. I was playing a lot in Edmonton. So I'm like, I'm going to go back. And I went back to school, and I thought, okay, now I'm going to take recording, because I was always into that. But, I thought, why not go back instead of 4 years there? It's all just skills and tools, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, not one of my diplomas or degrees ever got me a job or a gig. It's just knowledge, right? So I'm like, oh, go do that. And then I ended up going to Asia for 3 years and playing all over Middle East and Asia, Southeast Asia. So that was my route. Anyway, I'm glad I did that one.
Was that with a band or something in Asia, or what was that?
Yeah. So it was like a 7-piece party band that we played, basically 5-star hotels. 3 and 4 month contracts. Oh, it was one of the highlights of my life. Next to having kids and meeting my wife, it was the highlight of my life for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I know. Frank, not long ago, you were still doing the cruises and
say it, Paul. Say it. Cruise ships.
I've changed my tune on cruise ships because of the players that I know who are going on it. I know that there's cruise ships and there's cruise ships.
Yeah.
And I think you and also Joel Haynes do gigs that.
Yeah, Joel Haynes was on Royal Caribbean last. Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys do gigs that aren't you guys, I think, are doing nicer gigs than most.
Yeah. Kim and I ran into some problems with our bosses, so I don't do very many cruise ships anymore. But it's now theater show. Like I haven't, even playing the Ancaster Old Mill. That was one of the few times, like, sort of again in a bar setting, and that wasn't even really a bar setting because that was a bigger event. Ed and I are mostly festivals and theaters now. Rolling in at 1 p.m., set up, do a sound check at 3, go for dinner at 5:30, shows at 7:30, 8. Back in the hotel room at 10:30, 11.
Yeah.
I could literally be under a comforter and by 11 p.m. these days.
Yeah. Wow.
Separately in our own rooms.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen, I'd see your posts on Facebook, and it would be exactly, this night we're here, this night we're here. And it's always nice rooms. It's always, you're always playing soft theaters.
Yeah. It's a good feeling to be doing that. And it has its own length. Like people think, oh, that's, it's better than the bar gig when you start at 10 o'clock and go till 2 a.m. I said, yeah, but your day is just as long. Yeah. Because, you have to get there, and sometimes you're 5-6 hours away first. So you're up at 5 in, lobby call, get in the bus, drive your 6-7 hours to get your 1 p.m. load in. And then there's this, the sit around for, 2-3 hours while they wire everything up. And so that's when we started making coffee and all those things. Wouldn't trade it. If it's a bar gig now, it has to be, I think, what you went through. It has to be the right players, the right show. Like my last one was with Harry, and with John and Gary behind me and Jesse. That's a fantastic gig. It's not just a bar gig playing all the top 40 stuff that everybody, playing it badly, that kind of stuff. So it's fun doing great gigs, and I've turned down more of those bar gigs in the past. I don't know going forward. I think I probably will not jump back into playing based on, I just got to get some work done. And so if someone offers me $100 bar gig and it's going to be a garbage gig, I don't want to necessarily take that right off the bat. even if my first gig back. Like I just rather wait for it to be something that's fulfilling.
Yeah.
I'm
Get too old to be doing garbage.
But you touched there's something right there, Frank. I don't know about you, but I don't know how things are gonna. I'm expecting a big change. I'm expecting a big change going forward in many ways, so I think that I don't know if those type of bar gigs, like I was doing I don't know if you know about this group, Who It Is, that we have together, which is Jesse, Joel Haynes, Darcy Hepner, and me.
Yeah.
We have this group, and I've never in Hamilton, aside from maybe Harrison, had seen crowds come out and supporting a group like this. And I go, well, that's the benchmark now. That's sort of like when maybe I'm going to only play once a month or once every 6 weeks, and I'll do that band will only play, but we come out and you can't get in the place after. You can't get in, like you can't get in an hour before the gig. It's just packed. And I think to myself, going, I'm hoping that going forward, that more people get involved in situations like that. So when people go out, they're really getting it. They're really being involved in an event that's unique rather than a jukebox,
Yeah.
It is. It might be just by functionality of restarting is that all those bars that, oh yeah, your stage is over there. We don't even know where you're going to get your power. And so that's mostly great pro players play those gigs because they got to put food on the table. But that's also where a lot of your weekend warriors play too. That just, well, I got 30 buddies that are going to come down and drink beer. So they hire that band. And I think some of that has diminished the quality of music, where you're not having great players on stage anymore. So maybe that will sort of weed out some of those bad players. They're just not going to be, that bars, if they're going to hire music, they're going to want to hire a great band instead of just all the mediocre bands and players that have been around. And we take flack for saying those kind of things, but it's when we put a lot of time into becoming great players, and then you watch someone sort of kind of take all your gigs away, because they'll go in for less money because they have buddies that want to drink beer, and can fill the room faster that way.
Yeah, the race, I decided a long time ago not to compete with the Race to the Bottom, because the idea is there are far more people who are willing to play for the recognition rather than the money. So that to me, I can't compete with that. So what I have to do is compete with the next tier up, the guys who, hopefully you only bring in guys like you guys. You're only playing gigs where everybody on the stage could play with any Canadian act and not be an insult to it.
Yeah.
That's the level that you guys are at, and so that's where you should be. You shouldn't do it shouldn't in any way. I know that we all have to make a living, but making the right decisions on where we decide to put these energies going forward would change the landscape beautifully.
Yeah. You're right about
that. Work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
And enjoy it more.
Well, that's it. I mean, the overall theme here is that we have to do what makes us feel good. And that's why we started playing music. And I went through a period like you, Paul, where like I was literally almost losing my mind on some gigs, where I'm like cracking the backbeat harder just because I'm so pissed off of the insult, like you said, that these players on the same stage. And I'm not saying that I'm better than anybody, or that you shouldn't be on the same stage as me, but some people shouldn't be. Like, I've worked really hard to be where I'm at. How did you get here? And why didn't you do your homework? You could be a great player and you still didn't do your homework. You know,
Ed and I had a good experience of that, where I think the person that dropped the ball on the first show and had a second show coming up had an 8.5 hour drive in between, and about 6 hours into the drive, Ed texts me, says, "Haven't seen him put his headphones on yet to go over all the mistakes he made last night." We finally, hey, you might want to like review the music. You know, I know he's being paid the same money as we are, and he just dropped. You know, I mean, this happens occasionally, and you just don't want that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's not even about the money as much as it's like for me as it is how you're making me feel. Like I want to play music because I want it to make me feel good, you know. And when that doesn't happen because of something that could be easily fixed, like, you know, make mistakes the first night. Okay, well, don't make them the second night. Like, do your homework. It's that I can respect. Even if, however you got hired on this gig, okay, that's out of my control. But I can respect if you make mistakes the first night and you try to fix them the next night. But when you're just like talking your face off the whole road 8 hours, and you know, I'm the first guy that'll be like, "Don't you think you should be listening to that music?"
or that nice resort in Wisconsin. We're like singing around the pool, and so is the. He happens. Anyways, I won't. He was a bass player, and he really could have been using the time to woodshed in his room while he was, instead of hanging out by the pool, because it didn't get any better. You know?
And then, like, just a quick story about this guy. So we were in the pool looking at each other going, "Why isn't this guy back in his room learning his stuff?" This is a different story, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah,
It might sound like a very, like, part 2 of the other movie, but it's a complete different person. And he's following us around. So we're in the pool, and I look at Frank. I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to the steam room here because, like, you know, I'm trying to give him a hint. Like, maybe you should go learn your material."
And leave me hanging with him.
When we get to the steam room, all of a sudden, guess who shows up? Like, he's just following us around.
You know what? Like, well, in when I was a kid, not to get, but I can remember getting really beat up. Like when I told you about this when I was 17 and playing in this band. I was the only white guy in the band, and so I'm in this band, and you know, everybody's older than me by the next guy age up with the next guy was 6 years older. The guy who passed away last week, a few days ago. The drummer was like, I think 11 or 12 years older than me, and he was a heavy guy, like really buff guy from Trinidad. And so I'm, you know, jockoing around, right? Because I'm this I've got all kinds of attitude. And I did have chops. I had worked hard, but I had more attitude than anything. And, you know, we'd be playing something and I'd jocko it around or something. And after a while, like I was playing on the gig, but like my knees were hurting. You know, I'd finished the gig and, man, what happened? You know, because you get so caught up. I was thinking I was bumping my knee or something. And then after a while, I was relaxing more on the gig, and I realized it was from time to time something was hitting me on the leg, right? And so, like, you know, every time I would take off after a while, I'd have my head turned, like showing up, bang, I'd get hit, and I'd look around, the guy's just drumming. So one time I catch him. Fucking, he's nailing me right in the knee. And I go, TC, what's good? And he goes, play the fucking groove, man. Like, that was the existence. There was commando training involved in being a player, right? And it worked. I gotta say, it was kind of like hockey or something. Like that, right? Like you get beat up if you don't do if you don't keep your head up going in the back. You're gonna get hit. You're gonna hurt yourself.
I think I remember, Frank, you used to tell a story of how Harrison would say, you know, we need to give these younger musicians more of the truth.
Yeah.
Tell them that they suck if they suck.
Yeah.
You know, and stop like petting them, you know, like, oh, you're doing a great job.
I stopped. Kim and I just finished to host just before this all went down. We sort of put in our resignation for our 17-year run at hosting an open mic. And probably about 5-6 years ago, I stopped. I'd be saying thanks for coming out, but I stopped the false. Yeah, that was great. Thanks for coming out. I wouldn't add that. I more did the what's his name? I would say, oh, you're playing greats. The Wendell Ferguson line. Instead, hey, you're playing greats. Thanks for coming out. Just really fast slip it in there because I couldn't, it justified our payment for having them come out, and then they get people loving them because they're playing the latest song. So the university crowds, these guys are great. No, not really. These kind of suck. But so I can't praise bad stuff anymore. Right. And I've gotten other people not hired because I'll get called and I'm like, who's the drummer? Oh, okay, no, never mind. You don't want to play with them, so. Yeah. But I'd rather that. I'd rather know right off the bat what's going on in the show and then go, okay, I don't want to get involved in that because it's going to be a long night. It's too long of a night to have to put up with that kind of stuff anymore. Yeah. But I want to ask you also, Paul, on outside of bass playing and music, I know you got a couple of good passions too, and outside of your family,
But the family is like we all. Yeah. But I've been into diving the past few years as you've gotten into it.
Yeah.
Now, when you were diving down Roatan, were you diving in West End or where did you dive?
I never did get to dive in Roatan.
Scuba diving, right, gentlemen?
I got the shirt, but I didn't do. I've been diving like more Cozumel and Costa Maya when I was on the ships. So then it was Costa Maya where I got. And I wanted to in Roatan. It was never a day, like I never had a full day off the ship to do that dive, like to get off early and be able to do it and warrant it. So mine was more in Cozumel and Costa Maya.
So did you do Palancar in Cozumel? Was it Palancar Reef you did?
I don't know the name of it. It's right. It wasn't far. How far is that reef from the downtown area? Is it away from it?
Is it San Miguel? Is that what's the name of the Cozumel? Is it San Miguel? Is that the capital? Like the city?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the.
So San Miguel. It would be. It's west of San Miguel, and it's on the west, sort of north side of Cozumel.
Yeah, I don't know if I did that. I did the ones closer to San Miguel, like because that's where again we get off. I could walk over to the one of the dive shops, and a lot of times it would be just a swim out to the wall, and then drop down in a couple of those parks, and then you do some drift. And I discovered what drifts can do to you in Cozumel.
I had the scariest thing in a drift day. We were 2014. January 2014, my son and I, we were in Cozumel and Palancar at the Santa Rosa Wall, and we didn't know we were there. We were with a dive master who hadn't taken his precautions, and we're under. You know what the current's like there?
Yeah.
It's not slow. Well, where we were, it was. So we're at a plateau under the wall. We're not that far down. We're about 60 feet, and all of a sudden, the dive master goes like that, and you start swimming diagonally, like the current's coming like this.
Yeah,
he's swimming diagonally up, like diagonally across and up under this to this plateau, and so I'm down there, and I'm with my instructor from Canada, all of our instructors had invited my son and I to join them on this trip. So he was on the dive with me, and we all start boogieing, and then this guy starts really kicking hard. Well, I'm swimming upstream, I'm swimming up current. My son's with me, and my instructor's with me, and I get down to 100 psi, like I've got nothing. The tank's empty.
Yeah.
And so I just said to my instructor, I'm low on air, I'm going up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I just said to my son, "You come with me. We're going up." And he came up with us because he was down to almost the same. And we went down. As we came up, as we surfaced, we did our safety stop, and then we surfaced. And the dive master didn't even look to see if we were behind.
Wow.
We were on our own. And we could see that there was an edge there. It was a cliff, and it was an underwater waterfall. And it had taken a diver the week before. It had taken 2 divers, and just John took them to 300 feet and killed them.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What happened is it was this anomaly that happens at a certain time of the year at the Santa Rosa Wall, and it was at that time of the year. And so I'm with Anders, and we just got over. I could feel a bit of the current when we were surfacing, but we were okay. But apparently we were within a few hundred yards of where this happened, and so that kind of woke me up to getting information, asking more questions.
Yeah.
Down in Roatan, the one thing I got to say is the diving outfit that I've been with down there, I always stick with them because they're so clear before we do our dive. You know, the check before we do our dive, the discussion that goes on is really clear, and there's enough DMTs, dive masters in training. There's probably 1 to 3 people. It's pretty.
Wow, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's somebody around who's got their eye open, and not that we need, because I think I'm at 58 dives now or something.
Okay, right on.
Not a ton, but I've done more than. I've got a few down. I'm comfortable with.
Yeah,
it.
nice.
My tank lasts a long time now. So
nice.
Does your tank last longer the more you dive and you start to realize like your breathing changes?
Yeah,
learning how to keep your breathing steady through the entire dive.
The stress, I was going through tanks. I was sucking air going through them at 15.
Especially when you see that shark. That's
yeah. Now I go through.
Going down.
Yeah, it's like, or just the fact that my body wasn't comfortable with this concept that I was vulnerable to oxygen. I didn't trust the mechanism. I didn't trust this regulator.
I didn't. I was. I didn't sleep for about a week before I was being tested, because, and I realized afterwards it was the part where where they're going to turn my air off.
Okay.
So so you know what it feels like. And then he also did it a second time. We were only at about 25 feet when he did this. Then he goes, okay, we did that once successfully. Then the next time he goes beside me, turns it off, and swims 10 feet away, which is a more realistic situation when your air will go off. So now I've got to go to him. I got no air, share me, give me some air. And and his big thing was, he goes, a lot of companies there and around the world won't actually turn your air off underwater. And he says, no, you need to know what it feels like to not have air.
And how do you share
air? I'm guessing
it's,
pardon me?
How do you share
So everybody has a secondary
octopus
regulator.
Yeah.
So that you can share, so you share another person's tank.
And you hook that second regulator up to the other person.
Oh, you go to the person with it, and then they just share it. It's got a few feet on it, so you can this way you're also staying close with the person that has no air.
Gotcha. You grab it,
and you're gonna immediately, plan your ascent after that.
Right.
Have a second stage. It's a second stage regulator. It's an octopus. It clips onto your side, and it's always there. And it's usually a different color. Like mine's yellow.
Yeah.
And so you can see it in any condition, and it's always there in case somebody gets low. My son is notorious. He's like a flipper when he gets in the water, and he'll go down. He's like 60 feet below everybody. He's always the guy who wants to find everything, wants to find it first, and he wants to be the guy who's kind. So he's always coming up to me, 3/4 of the way through the dive, and I, I'll ask him what he's got, and he tells me, he tells me he's got 100 psi. So
yeah.
Because he doesn't, because he's like 21 years old, and this whole thing to him is just still a party,
Exactly. You got to. I always thought, I said, when I was reading the manuals and the books and that, I said, there must have been, from the time Cousteau developed the Scuba to 66 is when they had the PADI certification, sort of the amount of really horrible deaths that happened. And illness and accidents that would have happened would have been awful. Like, it was just they learned by mistakes. It was and they were big mistakes because you're under the water, So
how many people had to die in order to get those tables together?
all those tables. Yeah.
Or how many to get our dive? Do you have a dive computer?
No. I just go with the old with the watch and stuff like that. I always dive with a master. I haven't done enough dives to consider buying all my own gear yet. So I just borrow it when I'm down there.
Yeah.
The next day, and now it's a matter of getting down there again since I'm not doing cruise ships. So it's a little different, but I love it, and I can't wait to get back to it.
Well, I'm going to go down next year because I play a lot now down there. There's a jazz guitarist from New York who I've met, and he's invited me to play a festival down there next year. So we're going down, and we'll probably do about 6 gigs down there.
Cool.
And he's a diver as well. So that's next March is where I'm.
Nice, man. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
love it.
Play and scoot
And live.
And live.
Play and live. That's living life.
As long as being safe, you can live down there. It's you have to. Mother Nature can really take a toll on you, but it's a beautiful world down there. Freedom.
It's a lot of Canadians, and it's pretty reasonable down there. I don't want to talk too much about it because somebody sees this, and I don't want. It's still a secret,
Exactly. Where was that?
You don't go fishing at that hole. You don't want to go fishing there.
Cozumel used to be like that. It used to be.
Where exactly was that, Paul?
In Cozumel. Anyways, what do we got? We got isolation records. Any top three pick you would take if you
Desert Isle records here.
Desert Isle records.
Yeah.
That's a hard one. That's a real hard one because you have ones that you heard when you were a kid. Like I was listening to Heavy Weather, which I listened to 1,000 trillion times. I was listening to it, still thinking it's a brilliant piece. Would that be a Desert Island one? Maybe not, because I'd try to find something. If it was a desert island, I'd try to find something that I could always get something new out of it. I think, like for instance, Both Sides Now, Joni Mitchell's record from 2000. I think it was the orchestration. That record to me has a million listens left in it. Awesome. So that might be a desert island one. So that's what I'm thinking of that. Kind of Blue. I've listened to it a million times. I think there's 40 million listens left in that.
Sure.
Maybe Stravinsky Symphony of Psalms, like which version of it, but it has enough information that if I was on a desert island, I could. And those were my only 3 things.
That's actually pretty awesome little variety of sorts.
Yeah, I don't know. Those. I think maybe those 3. And it's not to take away from the. I'd love a Bob Marley record or something else equivalent, but I'd probably have to stick to those.
I thought we always ask the isolation records, right? So I thought I better write my own list.
Yeah,
anybody ever thought? It's right here. Not that I was using this time to to talk about my isolation records, but no, where did I put that thing? But it was Bob Marley Legend was one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I could listen. I've listened to that. I've burnt through copies, and it's just feel good stuff. And if you're on an island, hey, come on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge reggae fan. I love reggae. It's probably, if I could have my number one band to ever play for or with, would be like either Peter Tosh or Bob Marley, or like definitely reggae for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, I love it. It's huge.
Did you ever play in a reggae band?
I did. Truce and Rights. Do you know Truce and Rights?
Yeah. Did you play that? Yeah.
I played with them for about just about a year. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Gary and Bernie and Moja and Friendly.
Wow.
And, a lot of fun. Hey, I love how reggae music, like everyone's just doing their part and they're playing it simple and then it all just comes together and a force to reckon with, but like it's nobody's busy. Everyone's just doing that one thing they're doing, right? Like the Bernie on the keys. And then he's just doing that all day, all night long, like, and doesn't move, like a rock cranked right up.
Yeah.
And what was it? I just had a terrible, the bass player,
Gary Lowe?
No, I'm thinking of I'm thinking of Marley.
Oh, yeah.
Barrett. What's his name? Barrett. Barrett. I love that guy's playing. I love his lines.
Yeah.
What a beautiful line.
Yeah. Bass makes the reggae songs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really do. Yeah.
It's everything. It's you said it. It's not one of the parts is complicated, but the parts together is fantastic.
Where can we find you, sir? Where can people find you if they want to?
Well, in the next little while, I'm going to have paulintson.com is going to be back on. And,
awesome.
And it's going to have lots of examples of the new stuff.
Great to have you, brother.
Great time, guys. And I'm just shaking with all the coffee that I've had and all the buzz that's gone on.
We're gonna
so much.
We're gonna mail you some of ours.
I would. Let me pay for it. Let me buy it online because I really would love to support the cause.
Thank you.
Thanks again, guys.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Take care.
Cheers.
Cheers. Once again, we get the living room look.
I love it. We just leave it like that.
He's gone. He's just gone.
That was awesome.
Wow. Paul Intson. Fantastic. What a great coffee hang that was. I've hung around with him enough times and I've learned so much more just in that little hang about him, about his process.
He is such a, like, he is with what he has done and what he does, he's such an intense guy, but yet he's not. He's such a softie and just a great guy to have a hang and conversation with. I mean, like, he's right. I could have went all afternoon.
You could have went. We have to revisit him, again, just to shop what we didn't get in.
That's right.
There's another 2 hours in there.
Exciting.
Thank you, folks, for hanging out again. Another episode of in the can.
Another one down.
Have to go to the can after every coffee hang.
Frank, great job, bud.
Wonderful job.
We'll see you next week.
Same time.
Actually, I'll probably see you later today, but next week enough.
Oh, exactly. All right, man. You guys,
thanks everybody for hanging out with us. We'll see you next week.
Take care. Bye. Is this thing on? Oh.